If you're at this video, hopefully you have either got a background with React or you've gone over to that appendix section and went through that quick application. Either way, hopefully we now have a good understanding of some of the basics of React. And at this point, we really only need to know about React, no need to be concerned about Redux or React Router or anything like that. The first thing we're going to do in this video is install a little boilerplate generator, which we'll use in just a moment. At my command line, I'm going to run sudo npm install -g create react app. If you're on Windows, you do not need to include the sudo right here. So if you're on Windows, you can omit that. I get prompted for my password, I'll enter it, and that starts up that process. Now we'll talk about create react app's purpose in just a moment if you've never used it before, but while this installation is running, let's flip back over and talk about the application that we're going to be building using our lottery contract. So here's a mock-up of the application we're going to make. Yep, this is it, pretty straightforward in nature. This first application is going to be focused entirely on how we interact with Ethereum contracts using JavaScript code. So this is much more focused on some of the nuts and bolts rather than making a very pretty looking application. I can guarantee you that the next app we're going to work on is going to look really neat and very nice, but for this one, we're going to be focused much more on the functionality side of things. So there's a couple of notes I want to give you around this application. And let's take a look at some of them. At the very top, we're going to have a little bit of text that is focused around informing the user about the status of our contract. So we're going to say who the manager of the contract is. Notice that it's going to be the manager's address as opposed to any name or anything like that. On the line underneath that, we'll then state the number of people who have entered the contract and also how much money is currently inside of the prize pool. Most of this information right here can be retrieved through calls to our contract. Remember that a call is a read-only process for obtaining some information from an individual contract. So that's what we're going to do for most of the stuff at the top here. Now the next two sections are going to be a little bit more interesting. The next one down is going to enable users to enter into the lottery. So our users should be able to enter in some text right here or some amount of ether that they want to use to enter into the contract. They should then be able to click on the enter button and then somehow enter into the contract itself. Essentially, we want to call the enter function on our contract. Underneath that, we'll have the section that is intended for use by the manager of the application. So it's going to be a button that calls the pick winner function. Remember that the pick winner function can be only invoked by the manager of the contract. So in theory, we really only want to show this section right here if the user who is visiting this application is the manager. That would be really nice to do, but for our first time through this application, we're going to keep things simple, and we're going to say that no matter who you are, whether you are the manager or not, we're going to always show this section right here with a button that says pick winner. In the future, we'll figure out how to do some more conditional rendering to decide whether or not to show a given element. Then at the very bottom of the page, we're going to have a little status text area. So for example, after clicking on the pick winner button right here, we might show the address of the person who won or something similar. The status text area is going to be used to inform our users about what is currently going on with the contract. Remember, whenever a user tries to modify data inside of our contract, that issues a transaction to the network, and it can take anywhere from 15 seconds to 30 seconds or so for that transaction to be processed and cleared. So we need to make sure that our users are reasonably aware of what is going on inside the contract as they start interacting with it. And for that, we want to show them some status information and say, okay, we're currently entering you into the contract, or maybe after clicking on the pick winner, we then say, okay, a winner has been picked and here's who they are, or whatever it might be. Essentially, we just want some practice of informing our users about when a given operation has been completed. For this first application, we're going to take this very simplistic approach of showing some text status, but in the future, we will instead use spinners and more complex messages to give our users a better idea of what is going on and make our application a little bit more dynamic and lively. Now, the last thing I want to remind you about here is that in this course, we're going to be using the Rinkeby test network for just about everything from here on out. We're using Rinkeby so that we can get a very realistic idea of how long these transactions take to be processed. As I said much earlier, A lot of people tend to develop these applications, like these web front ends, using test networks that run locally. And those local networks always process transactions instantaneously. All that really does, it makes the development process a lot smoother and a little bit faster because your transactions clear instantly. But at the end of the day, that usually means that you just end up developing your applications under the assumption that your users will see transactions clear instantly. And so my personal belief is that that leads to some poor development practices or poor user interfaces because you are not really using the application as your users will use it. So that's why we're going to use Rinkeby. We really want to see those delays and understand how they affect how users use our application. All right, so that's a little bit on what's going on here. Now, the last thing I want to do is use that Create React App tool that we just installed a moment ago to generate a new React project. So if you are here in this course, having already gotten some experience with React, chances are you've heard of Create React App, but if you just went through that appendix section, you may or may not have heard of the Create React App tool. So this tool right here, Create React App, is a command line application that is used to generate a new React application. And we're going to use it to generate a new little project that is going to serve as the front end for our application. I'm going to make sure that I am outside of our lottery directory. So at my terminal, you'll notice that I am not inside that lottery project anymore. So I am in a parent directory. Out here, so in this parent directory, we're going to generate a new React application by using the Create React App tool. So I will run Create React App and then the name of my project. And we're going to name this lottery-react, like so. So we're not going to use the same project folder as we did for our testing setup and all the contract stuff. This is going to be a one-time thing, and the only reason we're making these two separate folders is because of the way that Create React App works. Unfortunately, Create React App, when we generate a project with it, it doesn't make it very easy to integrate other code bases like our existing lottery contract right here into it. On the next project we work on, we will be making a single folder, like a single repository that is going to house all of our project code. It's just for this one that we're going to do things a little bit differently. And again, it is because of the way that Create React App works and some limitations in our ability to require in or make use of JavaScript files across folders. So just a little technicality. All right, so we'll run this command and we should see some text about creating a new React app in this given folder. It will then start installing some modules right here, which will take a couple of minutes. So let's pause here and we'll continue in the next video and start writing this new application.